All right, so today we're diving deep into the world of George Orwell, two of his most iconic works, actually. 1984 and Animal Farm.
Oh, excellent choices.
Yeah, and I mean, you're not here for like a simple plot summary, right? We're going deeper. We're going to be exploring those echoes and the intersections, really, between these two worlds that seem so different on the surface.
Absolutely. I think what we're really looking for are those subtle connections that kind of illuminate Orwell's thinking about power, control, and what it means to even be human.
Exactly. And we all know 1984 paints this chilling vision of a totalitarian state.
Right.
Big Brother's always watching.
Mm-hmm.
And then Animal Farm, on the other hand, uses this animal fable to kind of cleverly critique the Russian Revolution.
Right.
But what we're really interested in today is how these themes kind of intertwine, how they speak to each other even.
Yeah, it's fascinating how Orwell uses these kind of distinct narratives to expose these universal truths about power dynamics and just human nature. It's almost like he's holding up a mirror to society, showing us these patterns that just keep repeating themselves.
Okay, so let's unpack this. One parallel that comes to mind right away is the theme of surveillance
Right.
and the suppression of individuality.
Hmm.
Both novels create this atmosphere where someone is always watching, always judging.
Oh, for sure.
So in 1984, it's those ever-present telescreens, of course,
Yeah.
and the thought police, always kind of lurking in the shadows, ready to punish you for even thinking the wrong thing.
Yeah, and in Animal Farm, you have the pigs.
Right. They initially promise liberation, but gradually they become the oppressors. Now, they may not have the telescreens, but those watchful eyes and the subtle twisting of the Seven Commandments, that achieves a very similar effect.
It's like that moment in 1984 where Winston, he realizes that even a person's back can be revealing to the telescreen. It's a subtle detail, but it suddenly makes you hyper-aware of how insidious surveillance can be. Oh, absolutely. And it makes you think about like how it creeps into every corner of your life.
Right. And it really does. And, this constant scrutiny leads to self-censorship.
Exactly.
Because people are so afraid of stepping out of line that they start policing their own thoughts and their actions.
Right.
And then individuality itself becomes dangerous. It's almost like an act of rebellion.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
And both the party in 1984 and those pigs in Animal Farm, they're masters at manipulating history to maintain their grip on power. Like when Squealer's always adjusting those Seven Commandments
totally.
to fit whatever the pigs want to do.
Oh, yeah.
It's like he's rewriting history in real time.
He is.
It's not even just erasing those inconvenient facts. It's about shaping that narrative to legitimize their power. They control the past, and by doing that, they also control how people understand the present.
It makes you wonder, though, could any society actually escape that gaze of power?
Yeah.
Especially with technology constantly evolving. I mean, it feels like Orwell's vision of constant surveillance is more relevant than ever.
Oh, I totally agree.
Yeah, and speaking of control, let's shift gears a little bit to the theme of language as this tool of power. Both 1984 and Animal Farm highlight how those in control manipulate language to shape thought and to really limit dissent.
Yeah, and in 1984, it's especially chilling with the creation of Newspeak. It's not just banning certain words, it's literally shrinking the capacity for thought.
Wow.
By eliminating words for those rebellious concepts, the party aims to make thought crime impossible.
And then in Animal Farm, it might be less sophisticated than Newspeak, but the pigs still manage to simplify these complex issues into these easily digestible slogans and mantras like 4 legs good, 2 legs bad.
Oh, right. It seems almost childishly simple when you think about it.
It does.
But I think that's exactly what makes it so insidious. These catchy slogans shut down critical thinking, and they create this sense of unity based on fear and exclusion.
Yeah, and that's what's so scary is we see echoes of this in our own world.
Oh, absolutely.
In the way political discourse often resorts to oversimplification and demonization.
Absolutely.
It's a little bit of a sobering reminder to be critical of the language that we use and that we encounter.
Yeah.
We need to be aware of how language can be weaponized to manipulate and control us.
Absolutely. And I think this ties into another crucial theme that connects both novels, this allure and the danger of blind faith. Orwell shows us how easily individuals, even those with good intentions, can be seduced by these charismatic leaders and these seemingly noble causes.
Yeah, it's like Winston. In 1984, he's drawn to O'Brien because he believes O'Brien is part of the resistance. He puts his faith in him, only to have it shattered in the most brutal way imaginable.
And in Animal Farm, you have Boxer, the workhorse, right? He blindly follows Napoleon, believing Napoleon is always right, even when Napoleon's actions clearly contradict everything the revolution stood for.
Right, right. It's heartbreaking because it just shows how easily good intentions can be exploited.
Right.
And how blind faith can blind us to the corruption and abuse of power.
Yeah. And it could be happening right under our noses.
Exactly, exactly. So Orwell is basically urging us to question authority, to be wary of anyone who demands unquestioning loyalty. Blind faith, even in a good cause, can be a dangerous, dangerous trap.
It can, and yet, despite all this darkness, both novels offer these glimmers of hope.
Yes.
These moments of rebellion that suggest that the human spirit just can't be totally extinguished. Now, they might be fleeting, but they remind us that the fight for freedom and for autonomy is a very deep part of the human experience.
Absolutely. I think about Winston Julia's affair in 1984.
Right.
It's this defiant act.
Yeah.
It's a reclaiming of their individual desires in a world that seeks to control every aspect of their lives.
Oh.
And even though their rebellion is ultimately crushed, it's a testament to this enduring human need for connection, for love, for something beyond the party's grasp.
And in Animal Farm, you have that initial uprising, when the animals overthrow Mr. Jones and they dare to dream of a better world, right? That's the same spirit. This yearning for freedom, for a world free from oppression.
It's a powerful reminder that the desire for freedom and justice can never be fully eradicated. Even in the face of overwhelming power, there will always be those who dare to resist, who refuse to give up hope.
Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that makes Orwell so relevant even today. It's not just about the darkness, but the resilience of the human spirit. It's a message that resonates with us today, even more than when these books were first published.
And as we continue exploring these novels, I think it's important to keep that in mind. Orwell's a master at exposing the dark side of power. But he's also reminding us that even in the most oppressive circumstances, there's always that flicker of hope, a spark of defiance that can never be fully extinguished. Well said. I think we've laid a solid foundation here today, unpacking some of the key themes that connect 1984 and Animal Farm. But of course, there's so much more to uncover.
Definitely. We've only just scratched the surface.
We have, so stick around because we're just getting started.
You know, it's amazing how Orwell uses these everyday details to just create this incredibly unsettling atmosphere in both novels. It's not even the big dramatic events, it's those little things.
Yes, it's like those subtle, almost mundane details that really get under your skin and they make it feel so oppressive, inescapable. Like in 1984, when Winston describes Victory Gin, you know that oily, sickly smell? It's like you can almost taste it.
Exactly. And it's not even just the taste or the smell. It's the way he drinks it so quickly. Like it's a dose of medicine.
Yeah.
His face turning scarlet. It paints this picture of a society where even like basic pleasures are tinged with this sense of dread and conformity.
Oh, absolutely. And it's like those bleak descriptions of the food in the Ministry of Plenty canteen, those greasy trays, the dented mugs, the mystery meat floating in this watery stew.
Right.
It's also dehumanizing.
It is. It's like this constant reminder that the party controls every single aspect of their lives, down to their taste buds.
Right. It's about deprivation, slowly crushing the human spirit through these constant reminders that you're not in control of anything, not even what you taste.
Yeah.
And then you see these moments where they get to experience real pleasure. Like when Winston and Julia, they finally get that real coffee and sugar.
Oh, yeah.
The contrast is just so powerful.
Oh, that scene in the room above Mr. Charrington's shop is just, it's so evocative. It's like this little oasis of sensory richness amidst the drabness and the control. You know the way they describe the aroma of the coffee, the sweetness of the sugar? It's like they're reclaiming a part of themselves that the party has been trying to suppress.
Exactly. And it makes you think about how these small acts of defiance, they can feel so monumental under this totalitarian regime, like seizing these little moments of pleasure, of agency, reminding yourself you're human, even if the party is trying to tell you otherwise.
And speaking of reclaiming humanity, I was thinking about how both novels explore the distortion of human relationships. And it's not just about romantic love or even, it's about how family, friendship, basic trust are all warped. You're absolutely right. It's so interesting how Orwell shows that totalitarianism can weaponize human connection.
Yes.
Like in 1984, when the party deliberately dismantles the family, encouraging children to spy on their parents, turning love and loyalty into tools of surveillance. It's terrifying.
Remember that scene when Winston's talking about how kids are given catapults
Yeah.
and told to report their parents for thought crime? Just that image is so powerful, turning the bonds of family into something sinister.
Right, and then in Animal Farm, you see this play out in the way the pigs betray Boxer.
Oh,
They
yes.
exploit his loyalty, they work him to death, and then, without a second thought, he's just discarded.
It's brutal.
It is. It reminds us that power corrupts. And those relationships,
Yeah.
they become expendable.
It's a powerful indictment of how those in power will manipulate and exploit even these most basic human connections. It makes you think about how these systems impact people on such a personal level,
Oh.
Beyond the politics.
Absolutely. It's the human cost of these regimes, the way they erode trust, compassion, the very fabric of what makes us human. It's these grand narratives of power and control, but they have very real consequences.
When I first read these books, I was so struck by the big ideas, freedom versus tyranny.
Yeah.
But as we've been discussing today, it's these smaller, more intimate details, the way Orwell captures the texture of life under these regimes that just make the stories so powerful.
It's those tiny moments, right? They just make these worlds come to life. They make them feel all too real.
They do.
The smell of that gin, the blandness of the food, the relationships, the way a person's back is even seen as a threat. These things stay with you long after you've finished reading.
And speaking of things that stay with you, I think we should really talk about memory and history. Both of these novels really seem to be fascinated with how those in power will manipulate the past to control the present.
Oh, the manipulation of history is central to both 1984 and Animal Farm. In 1984, the Ministry of Truth is tasked with literally rewriting the past to fit the party's agenda. Right. Erasing anything. That contradicts their version of reality. So it's not just about controlling the information. It's about creating this narrative where the party is always right, always in control.
It's that idea of doublethink, holding two contradictory beliefs at the same time and just accepting both as true.
Yes.
It breaks down people's ability to think for themselves, to question what they're being told.
Exactly. Creating a reality where they control not just the facts, but the whole way people understand the world.
And we see this in Animal Farm, too, with the pigs constantly changing the seven commandments
Oh, constantly.
to justify their actions. And the other animals, the sheep especially, they're so easily swayed by the rhetoric that they start to even doubt their own memories.
No, it's like that scene where Squealer convinces everyone that Snowball, who was a hero of the rendition, was actually a traitor the whole time.
Right.
They rewrite history and make him the scapegoat for all of their failures, for their abuses of power. It's really chilling.
It is. It makes you wonder how much of what we believe to be true is actually just the constructed narrative.
Right.
It makes you question everything.
It does. It's about being critical of what you see, what you read,
Yeah.
especially when it comes from people in authority,
Yeah.
and being aware of our own biases.
And this leads us to another big element that's in both novels.
Mm-hmm.
Propaganda. It's like the lifeblood of these totalitarian regimes, the tool they use to shape how the public sees things,
Yeah.
demonize their enemies,
Yeah.
and justify all of their actions.
Absolutely. In 1984, it's everywhere you look. The telescreens, the posters, the 2 minutes hate, creating this emotional atmosphere of fear and hatred and just unquestioning loyalty.
Like when the party announces that they're reducing the chocolate ration,
Oh, right.
even though they just celebrated increasing it the day before.
Right. And people just accept it,
They do.
even though it contradicts what they just experienced.
It shows how propaganda really works.
It does. And then in Animal Farm, you have Squealer.
Yeah.
And his masterful use of language, twisting the truth to justify all the pigs' bad behavior. He's this master manipulator, using statistics and rhetoric and convincing everyone they're better off, even though it's obvious their lives are much worse.
And it's a reminder that propaganda can be subtle. It can use facts and figures in really misleading ways. It makes it so important to be skeptical and to question the information that we're given, especially from those in power.
Orwell's own experience with propaganda during the Spanish Civil War and what he saw in the Soviet Union, that really shaped how he understood this.
I think that's what makes him so relevant today.
Oh, absolutely.
We live in this world that's just saturated with information, and it's harder than ever to know what's true.
Oh, it really is.
Orwell's novels are just this powerful warning against the dangers of propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
And they really highlight the importance of just thinking critically.
Absolutely. He's not just writing about these fictional dystopias.
Right.
He's showing us how power can be used in the real world to distort reality. to manipulate people. It's a message that's just as important today as it was back then.
But even with all of this darkness, all this talk of manipulation and control, it's important to remember that Orwell does offer a glimmer of hope. Even in these oppressive worlds, you find those moments of defiance, those acts of rebellion that suggest that the human spirit can't be totally crushed.
Exactly. It's like those little moments remind us that even in the darkest of times, there's potential for resistance, for change, for a better future. And I think that's what makes Orwell so powerful. It's not just this depressing picture of oppression. It's a testament to the human spirit to endure and to hope.
So we're back, and we've been deep in these worlds of 1984 and Animal Farm. We've seen how power works, the ways control can seep into every aspect of life. But amidst all that, there's this persistent question, can the human spirit really ever be broken?
That's the question, isn't it? It's especially powerful in 1984 with Winston. He's just an ordinary guy, but then that spark of defiance, it just ignites.
He starts to question the party, to actually think for himself.
Right.
And that's what makes him dangerous. Not just the dissent, but the independent thought. That little flicker of imagination, that dares to see a world beyond the party's control.
Yeah, his love affair with Julia really captures that.
Oh, it does.
It's like this rebellion against the party's attempt to control everything, even the most intimate parts of human experience. It's about desire. It's about reclaiming your individuality in a world that tries to crush it.
That scene where they're in the room above Mr. Charrington's shop, it's so powerful. Just a stolen moment of freedom, a little taste of what life could be like.
Right. But we know it's doomed. That party, it's everywhere.
It is.
It gets into everything. And that's where the real horror of 1984 lies. Not even the physical torture. It's the way they get inside your head. The party breaks Winston, makes him betray everything he believes in.
Room 101.
Oh, God.
When he faces those rats. It's just awful. It shows you how the party uses those vulnerabilities.
Right.
Our deepest fears to control us.
Yeah, in the end, he's just broken. Betrays Julia, embraces Big Brother. It's just devastating. It really makes you wonder, can you resist that kind of power?
It's a tough question. Orwell doesn't make it easy.
No, he doesn't.
But he does give us this possible source of hope. With the proles.
Fools, right.
The working class.
Yeah.
That makes up most of Oceania. The party just dismisses them, like they're too stupid to be a threat.
Yeah, but Winston, he sees something different.
He does. He sees this vitality in them, this connection to real human emotion that the party members have lost.
Right.
Remember that scene where he's watching that old prole man arguing passionately about something so trivial? It's this spark of humanity in this bleak world.
Right, and it gives Winston hope that maybe someday the proles, with their emotions, their connection to the past, maybe they can overthrow the party.
We don't know if they do.
Yeah.
But that possibility is there. Even in those dark times, maybe the human spirit can resist, can endure.
Yeah, and that theme of resistance, that's an Animal Farm, too.
Yeah.
It might be a more cynical novel, but it still shows us that we can push back.
Animal Farm really is this brutal allegory for the Russian Revolution, showing how power corrupts, how even those who fight for freedom can become the oppressors.
It's like those pigs, right? They lead the rebellion, but they end up, just like the humans, they overthrew a real cautionary tale about power.
It is.
Yeah.
But even with that, you still see those little bits of resistance. The other animals, maybe they're not as smart as the pigs, but they know what's fair.
Right, they have this instinct.
They want a better life.
Yeah, think of Boxer, that hardworking horse.
Oh, yeah.
Tragically naive, but his belief in those principles, his willingness to sacrifice, that's a strength that the pigs just can't take away.
And there's Benjamin, the old donkey.
Benjamin, right.
He sees right through the pigs, but he feels powerless. But even his cynicism is like a refusal to be fooled by all that propaganda. He's this silent observer.
He's a witness.
Yeah. So even though Animal Farm feels more pessimistic, it still shows us that resistance is possible. Even against these huge forces, people can hold on to what they believe in.
It's a reminder that it takes many forms, that fighting spirit.
And that's what's so brilliant about Orwell. He shows us the darkness, but the light too. He doesn't sugarcoat it, but he also reminds us that there's always that potential to resist, that little spark of hope.
Absolutely. And it's something that really stays with you, doesn't it?
It does. In a world where we're just constantly overwhelmed with information,
Yeah.
it reminds us to think for ourselves, to question, to hold on to the truth.
Orwell's work is a call to action. Be aware of how power works. Question what you're told. Never give up hope.
Well said. We've explored some really complex ideas today. surveillance, the way language and history can be manipulated, but also the power of the human spirit, that need to fight for something better.
Orwell's words, they matter now more than ever, offering this warning and reminding us what we could lose.
It's up to us to pay attention, to think critically, to never stop fighting for the world that we want. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of George Orwell.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
We hope you'll keep exploring his work and find your own aha moments. Those insights, they're out there. Until next time, keep those minds sharp and those spirits strong.